Christine has an amazing story to tell. I know many of you wear Lululemon, many of you are obsessed with Lululemon, but what is, to me, the most fascinating thing about the business that she has built is that she has created community by doing exactly the opposite of what just about every retail store or company has ever done. And it's totally fascinating. You don't spend a lot of money on marketing, on traditional PR, SEOs. What do you do to build community?
Well, we actually turned the model upside down. And it starts with really my personal philosophy. And I think about what I've always struggled to do in my own career is to have a meaningful contribution. And when I'm unhappy in a job, it's when I'm not making one. So I was intrigued by the idea, how do you build a company where everybody can make a meaningful contribution and do their best work that's purpose and values led? So we teach at our store level and throughout the whole company leadership, and we teach judgment, not process and rules. And like Ginny said, we actually have a vision and a purpose statement for the company. And we do that same thing for the brand. So what we do at the store level is we actually turn them loose. We teach them on the brand, and we give them the tools, and we teach them judgment.
These are employees?
Employees, our store manager, the educators, and then we hire a really diverse profile at our stores. They create their own Facebook pages. They do all their own photo shoots. They select all their own ambassadors, which are key people in the community. They run all their own community programs. The new manager's hired in advance, usually about 6 months, works with us. Then she goes out to her community, does all the pre-branding, and puts together a program. And we don't even know what they're doing. They don't have to ask for permission. They just get the hours and the budget, and they create these most amazing things.
And they can decorate the store any way they want?
We don't send down planograms. They can do their own windows. We share best practices from stores, and so they have a network of community support for different initiatives and teams that they work with, and so they can see how do you merchandise socks from somebody else, but not from us. And we teach principles in visual merchandising. But you know, my experience is even if we sent down the planogram, boxes don't arrive on time, and God forbid the customer buys at a different level than you thought they would. And so then if they're waiting, they're not owning. So our philosophy is to really give ownership so that you get ownership. They know they're the person that has to fix that. And if they make a mistake, like let's say they put something in the window that's not a hit with their community, which we've had.
Why don't you want to use the example that we talked about before?
Am I allowed to give that one?
Yes, you are.
I think. We had a store manager who took a little bit of a political bent on a window, and it was during the Bush-Obama transition, and they pulled down all the shorts on the mannequins and said no more Bush, and and it was in a Republican community, so it didn't go over very well.
But interestingly, no one was fired, right?
No one was fired.
What did you tell me about sort of how that came through and how you were able to allow them to still have a job and some sense of ownership after that?
So what happened was, of course, I get a call from the mall manager, and he's like, do you know what your team's doing in the windows? And I go, no, what's my team doing in the windows? And he told me. I go, okay, I'll be back to you. So we picked up the phone and we called the store manager and said, so what are you doing? And the next question I said was, what does your community think? And she goes, yeah, I'm getting a lot of moms coming by saying maybe it doesn't look so good with the kids. I go, how do you feel about that? And she goes, well, they don't like it, but are you telling me to take it down? I said, no, I'm asking you what you want to do with your unhappy guests, and how do you feel about the message that you're sending? Is what you've chosen to do relevant for your community? Is it resonating? And she goes, no. And I go, all right, what do you want to do? She goes, I'm going to take it down. That's probably a good decision. So, but then she shared what happened with other managers in the leadership community, and she learned a valuable lesson about when you are the manager of that store, you're leading your community, and your personal politics or things, and if you play those out, it has effect on the business. And so that lesson that she learned and how it then taught it to a lot of our other store managers about where the edge is, what's the right thing to do and being held accountable, which we do. So We made her write the letter on her Facebook page. We didn't make her, she wanted to. Write the letter on her Facebook page apologizing and saying why she did it, but that she also recognized it didn't resonate and take responsibility for it, which I think is, adults is what we truly want, right? You can't have the responsibility without the accountability.
And to have accountability at sort of a local level, I think is something that really distinguishes the stores as well. Talk a little bit about sort of how the local environment is taken into account. I think you had mentioned an example of a store that just opened in Wrigley Field.
Yeah, and even though we have the brand and it's centered in yoga, what we really want is to connect yoga to local community. What's important to your community? So we were opening a new store in Southport and Roscoe, which is in the shadow of Wrigley Field. And the store manager decided to approach Wrigley Field and see if they could do a 3,000 person yoga class before a game on Wrigley Field. So they said no to 3,000, but they said yes to 1,000. So
which you would not think is sort of the natural
Yeah.
fan base for the Lululemon people,
Yeah. But it was amazing. So the manager created this whole theme, and they had all of the ticker tape things going around, and it said hit an home run and really great. And so they announced it in their store and on their Facebook page, because the store hadn't opened yet and they were doing their community. They got the 1,000 people, but the most interesting thing was about 40% were men. And they were darned if they were going to let their wife get on Wrigley Field before they were, so they were coming to yoga. So we had all these first-time people engaged in yoga, and so then the guys outfitted the men before they were allowed to get on the yoga mat to come to the stadium. So it was really just a great community event and was so talked about and so beloved because we hit at the heart of what matters to that community, and that's the magic. And so the first time I heard about it was when I got the pictures.
Isn't that difficult, though, for the CEO of a company to not know? I mean, that's a huge deal to have sort of that kind of a brand presence and to not even know about it till it happened.
But what I trust is that the brand is based on the values, and that the people that we hire, it's the law of attraction, want to be those creative people who have that accountability, whose talents matter, and that I trust that they buy into the brand principles. And with that great trust comes the responsibility, and that's what we teach. And I have found so little that they've done wrong or that I feel like I have to apologize for. I have to write some follow-up letters every once in a while, so they know I know, because that's really what people want to know, and that we're taking appropriate action if we have to. But I find customers, because of the deep ownership we have and that relationship in the community, actually go in and talk to their store managers, and they act immediately. Any system I build from the head corporate office, by the time it came up the ranks and a group met and decided what to do with it and it went back down the ranks, we'd probably A, make the wrong decision, and B, you've disempowered, people aren't taking risks or doing what they should do, and they feel that ownership and they respond immediately. We get very few calls into our guest education center because they can make the decisions about what they want to do with their guests. So we have happy guests, we have happy people working for us. I have this one investor, Harvey, that comes in to see me twice a year, and his one question to me is, are your people happy? They look happy in the stores. What are you doing to keep them happy? And our whole philosophy around how we pay people, which is at the 75th percentile, our store managers make over $100,000 a year. Our assistant managers make 65 to 90, depending on when they've come into the system, and our educators make $15 to $25 an hour, and we pay 85% of their benefits. Everybody gets 2 weeks vacation. So we're deeply committed, and part of our community model, what I've always asked myself is, why don't we do all the big endorsements and sponsorship marketing? So what I've just done is I've reoriented the value chain, and I've put the money into our people, into the local community, and into our supplier base, and the pay that we pay at our factories and the working conditions. And so what I'm really proud of is that we've built the #1 retail apparel business model in terms of profitability, and we've done it by living our values. And that's a really powerful statement, while delivering great shareholder value. And it's over a 200% return to the shareholders.
Right. I mean,
in
what's
5 years.
so fascinating about this is it's not just a feel-good experience, right? This is a company that has an unbelievable multiple. It's making, sort of outperforming all the other retail metrics, and people still feel good about the experience. So on that note, why don't you give us a couple tips for how to build a community? And feel free to be as contrarian as possible, because I really do think you're offering a different model.
I think number one is, the first thing I started with, which is jobs big enough for people. And that line comes from one of my mentors, Howard Behar. And I kind of knew at Starbucks what that meant.
Who is he? Sorry.
He was the CEO, or he was the head of international and the head of North American retail, and one of the very early leaders at Starbucks. And he always talked about jobs big enough for people. And I didn't really know what that meant, or I thought I did, until I started on this work at Lululemon and took it to a whole new level. And when you hear like the job satisfaction and retention, how much fun people are having at work, 83% of people who work with us would return or recommend it to somebody else. So, I think that's game changing.
And is your turnover number
are very low? And the number one reason for leaving is to pursue our own goals.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the number two piece of advice is you have to be authentically local. And that means you can't control everything from up here. And we have a company that's built by a leadership team, and it's led by vision and purpose. I'm not the big brain making every decision in the company. And so by actually giving that responsibility, letting the brand values live meaningfully at a local level, keeps our brand entrepreneurial. And I'm always learning things from what they're doing that we then take and amplify up. Everybody that's on our website are ambassadors, people who work for us, employees. So they're not models. And so every story we tell is something that happens at a local community level, told by our people. So we're a culture of storytelling. So that authentic and storytelling and letting people contribute, I think, is really important. And then I think in terms of building, the last one, which is equally important, is that it's about best to market, not first to market. And it's not about rapid expansion. What I'm really careful to do is live our values in every decision we make. So we actually control growth, even though we've been growing at 40%. I won't grow a whole bunch of stores and increase my fixed cost and hire a bunch of employees without the revenue being there. And I won't hire a whole bunch of people to open a store that haven't worked for me. The rule is you don't get a store unless you've been there for 6 months. And that's why we also do showrooms and little precursor stores in the pre-branding, is because we drive desire.
Talk about that for a second, because I thought that was really interesting too. So when you're about to open a new store, it's not the way everyone would assume, where you sort of open the windows and yell and start.
And do advertising and everything else. We actually start 2 years before. So we are out there in the community building ambassadors. We're building those deep relationships. And ambassadors are the great yoga and Pilates and CrossFit and spin and run instructors in the market. And so we go out there and we actually help them build their businesses. That's how we actually look at it, is we're their cooperative marketing arm. So we're in service to them. And then the more healthy studios there are that are out there, when we open, the more opportunity there is for business. So what we really do is build healthy communities. And from that, then we have the opportunity to build our business. And it has to be really authentic. So for instance, like in Kansas City, when we went in with our little showroom, there was one yoga studio near us. By the time we opened the store, there were 7. And so there were 7 entrepreneurs starting their businesses. And then that meant they had a new client base who had healthier lives that they were then leading. So meeting our vision of building healthy communities. And I even feel that way about competition. If I truly believe in building healthy communities is what I'm up to, the more people that are doing it and helping me on that journey, I don't hate my competition. Do I get annoyed when they copy everything? Yeah. But at the end of the day, what's most important to me is living the values of building healthy communities.
Great. And I think this is a really great new model to think about. And I really very much appreciate your time, Christine. Thank you very much. Sorry we don't have more time.
Thank you.